Hepinize merhaba arkadaşlar. Bir Angular gecesine daha hoş geldiniz. NG Turkey ile birlikte Angular konuşacağız. Spesifik bir konu üzerinde durmayacağız bugün. Genel olarak Angular gidişatı hakkında konuşacağız. Hepinize hoş geldin diyorum. Chat'i şöyle hemen önümüze alalım. Bugün 3 konuğumuz olacak. Zaten duyuruyu da gördüyseniz biliyorsunuzdur. Her zaman daimi üyemiz Levent abi, Levent Arman Özak burada bize katılacak. Selin Tunç bizimle birlikte olacak. Sürpriz bir konuğumuz daha var bugün. Enea. Onu Angular üzerinde Angular'ı takip ediyorsanız eğer Twitter'da onu da biliyorsunuzdur diye düşünüyorum. Yayın İngilizce devam edecek konukları aldıktan sonra ve yayından sonra bir Türkçe altyazı eklemeye çalışacağız. İnşallah yapabiliriz. Umuduyla diyorum. Bir gönüllü çıkarsa aranızdan ve bize destek olursa neden olmasın diyorum. Ee, Yayın NG Turkey sponsorumuza buradan öncelikle bir teşekkür etmek istiyorum Ras Mobile'a. O da Ras Mobile ailesi de bizimle birliktedir şu anda. Büyük ihtimalle izliyorlardır. Onlara da sevgilerimizi ve kalplerimizi gönderiyoruz. Bu yayınları devam ettirebilmemizi sağladıkları için. Çok lafı uzatmadan Levent abiyi bir alarak başlayayım. Hoş geldin Levent abi.
Hoş bulduk. Sesim nasıl?
Gayet iyi geliyor. Selin'i davet ediyorum. Selin hoş geldin.
Hoş
Teşekkür
buldum,
ediyorum
merhabalar.
tekrar. Merhaba, teşekkür ediyorum tekrar bu yayın davetimize katıldığınız için, kırmadığınız için ve diğer konuğumuzu alıp İngilizceye atlıyorum. Bundan sonra İngilizce devam edeceğiz. Hello, Enea, you're welcome again. We already talked about the stream content. Hello again. Initially, I want to thank you to you because you accept our invitation for this stream. Let's get started. And what do you want to say anything about our community, or do you all have any introduce yourself? All of us, all of the other Turkish communities knows us, Levent, Arman, Özak, Selin, they already know us, but for the other people, for Turkish peoples, if you want to introduce yourself in it's your turn.
Yes, of course. So, hello everyone. I'm Enea. I'm a new GDE for Angular, and I got the title because let's say, have contributed a lot lately with posts, with conference talks, with, of course, if you follow me on Twitter, with a lot of tweets regarding what's new and best practices, signals, PRs, commits in Angular that may change the way we use it. And yep, that's it.
Thank you. For the beginning, for the conversation, just I have a few topics about talk about it, but just for the first question, I want to ask you, all of your GDs guys. So that's really great stream for NG Turkey community. So what do you think about for the Angular feature? What is your thoughts? What are your gut feelings about Angular? You know, Levent, in our previous streams, you always hated the Angulars. Not hate, you cannot say like that, but you always some concerns about the future of Angulars and is Angular is dying or not? That kind of questions always ask our Turkish communities. So you had a lot of thoughts about it, but after version 16, I think your thoughts a little bit change as a positively. That's my feelings about your thoughts. But what do you think about it? I wanna open the conversation for this topic, and just I want to learn the Enea's and Selin's thoughts about that.
You made me sweat. So here's the deal. First of all, I never said Angular is going to die anytime soon. Okay, I always said Angular is eventually going to die. but it's going to take a while because it's already too big to die immediately. We already know some frameworks that still didn't die because they were huge, and Angular is even bigger, so it's not anytime soon. But I was always concerned about the way things are going with the web development world, and it looked like, at least for a while, it looked like Angular did not really recognize that things are going sideways, and were investing hugely on topics that didn't matter for most people. But nowadays, it's not the case. Nowadays, they are really investing in things like server-side rendering or signals or that kind of things that really makes waiting for Angular's development, further development, meaningful. So I would say it's a good path that they are on, but it's also a risky one because there is a user base already. Okay, so millions of people are using Angular on a daily basis, and they know things about Angular. And the things are the things that are recently developed by Angular team are nothing like they already know. So it's a completely different paradigm. They are bringing new concepts and new ways of doing things. Sometimes there are two ways of doing things, which is risky for a framework like Angular, because it's in the first place, the reason for choosing Angular was one way of doing things. So whenever you go to another company, you still do the things the same way. It's a great advantage for for an enterprise company. They would know that any Angular developer they will hire will be able to do things just the way the previous employee did. So now these kind of things are blurry. So it's a little bit risky, I'd call it. But this is a good risk, not a bad risk. I would say this is a risk maybe worth taking. Okay. I don't know how it will pay off. We might see some time, a time frame that Angular looks like not moving upwards, maybe even downwards for a while, because of the simple fact that some people won't like this, okay? And some companies won't like this.
Yeah, you cannot be happy everyone's.
Yeah, but eventually, if they succeed in what they are really trying to do, then they will be huge because they will be better than anyone else. And in that case, they will gain other people that never thought about using Angular before. And that's I don't know. I mean, it's a two-sided coin. I don't know which will be the result. I'll just wait and see. That's all I can say.
We'll see. Yeah,
but I'm happy with the
finally you feel happy about Angular futures. We can say like that. Yeah, of course.
So
really glad to hear that. What's your thought, Enea, about Angular future again?
Yeah, the thing is, no one likes changes. No one likes even bad breaking changes. But the way Angular has been going this couple of years, except Angular from 1 to 2, has been with, let's say, automatic migrations. And that has, let's say, eased the life of developers while migrating. And the only issue there has been the only thing was the view engine to Ivy, and that thing broke a lot of people. Or let's say, not broke, but stopped a lot of people from migrating Angular to the newer versions. And now we will have another blocker, I think, with version 16, where we don't have NGCC anymore. And there are still a lot of, let's say, libraries that are not updated to use the new Ivy engine and the new package format that they see. But this is something that we as a community should solve. So Angular itself has tried to be as less, let's say, breaky as, let's say, possible. And with automatic migrations, we can have, let's say, even in libraries, as a community, let's say, support everyone else. And this is what I think is the best thing about Angular. It doesn't break, and it, let's say, takes us with it, let's say, on each version. So even
for the break, exactly.
except signals that we get now. Every other change, I think, has been automatically migrated. So
yeah, except signals. When you say migration, yeah, I know the Angular is doing that migration tools, automatic migration tools, really great. But if you follow that migration tools step by step, version by version, imagine that your version is still 8, and when you want to migrate your project up to 16, I think it's a little bit hard to, even if you use that migration tools, in enterprise world, the companies try to follow that versions, but the upgrading tools. But, in fact that it's still a little bit hard, because a lot of companies stuck on the before Ivy, because a lot of components, they used it, and that components didn't get any update about for Ivy rendering engine, and they stuck on that version. And recently in our WhatsApp group as an NG Turkey community, we talked about it a little bit, Levent, some kind of companies still stuck on the use version 8, and the rate was really huge. It's related to, again, the Ivy changes. But if you follow the every version at least before one version, it's okay. But for the breaking chase, of course, Angular tries its best. But for the reality, when you want to upgrade your packages, all of components, for example, the last changes, material components, they mark the old components as a legacy component, and they change the other components for the stylish things. And still, for example, I'm working on the Cortex, and we are using monorepo. We have a lot of shared components in our project, and we are using material components. And now we upgraded our version to 15, and we are considering about to upgrade to 16. But what should we do about the material components? We had written a lot of custom CSS styles for material components, and how we can rewrite all of that things, because the CSS structure is changed for the new material components. And as you said, the signals, up to signals, all of us tries to use state management, a kind of state management, third-party NGRX, ELF, Akita, NGXS, doesn't matter. But for these kind of tools, again, I think a little bit get useless after signals. Of course, Angular says us we have automated upgrade tool, but when you time to come to try to use it, it's I think that's my task, by the way. But yeah, I see your points. Yeah.
No, regarding material components, I understand your use case. So we have, even myself, I have a lot of ng deep in my, let's say, styles, where I modify internal Angular material component styles. But the thing is, the styles and the template of Angular material components is a private API. So the moment that we play with them or change them, it's our, let's say, responsibility to, let's say, keep them up to date. So it's just like if we use Angular internal classes that we are not supposed to. So it's our responsibility if we, let's say, play with them or change them. So Angular itself cannot do anything. That's the whole.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
Angular cannot stop us from changing its internal.
Yes, exactly. But of course, changes are really pretty good. Okay, and what about you, Selin? What's your gut feelings about Angular features?
I mostly agree with all of you, but I also want to add something. It feels good to see that Angular team listen.
By the way, your voice is a little bit less. The problem is mine or your microphone. I don't know, but your.
Fine, I checked the settings.
How about now?
Yes, now it's great now.
Okay. I mostly agree with all of you, and I want to add something. Uh, before 14th version, I think ninth version, Angular team acted like they do not listen the community. They act like they are on. But it feels good to listen the community's voice and make big changes. But from the listeners at the events that I attended, they wait the changes become stable because they think that maybe Angular team will not continue to the change as they want, and they want to know the things are stable and ready to use, so they are waiting. And also I think Angular will continue to get stronger in the future, but I also agree with Levent. In the near future, there is some decreasing point, but after that, it will become stronger more than ever.
Yeah, that's really great, and I also agree. I'm agree all of you guys, and you know, what's the point of the before the, as you said, before version 9, the Angular team didn't listen the community voices, and I'm not sure it's related to head of the Angular now, Misko. Maybe he changed this approach. He started to listen community much more compared with the before previous one versions, but to listen community is really a good thing, as you said. Yeah, changes is also great, but all of us we are a fan of Angular, and we don't want to say any bad things about Angular, and always we are thinking about the future is going to be great about Angular. And in terms of the other frameworks, React, Vue, they have a lot of strong approaches. One of them was server-side rendering, which is also Angular, focused on the server-side, and we will talk about it. But for the, I got all of your thoughts, and I want to start. Yeah, Selin, continue.
I want to add one more thing. And there is a big critic about newbies, new Angular learners. And they want to also make some things easy for newbies. But now there are two ways of doing some things. In the near future, they make them one, and they after that, I think it is easier to learn Angular from scratch. And this is one more thing.
Yeah, for that point, the learning curve is gonna be much more easy compared with the other previous versions. But in terms of the sources in internet, when you search, even if one of my friends asked me, can I learn any front end framework, which is also he wanted to learn React, and he asked me, can you help me like that? And I said to him, yeah, of course I can help, but if you want to start to learn Angular, I can help much more than React. And he started to learn, and after 1 week he came to me to ask a question about Angular, and I saw that he started to learn Angular version 1.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly, JS version. And I said to him, it's died, it's not supported anymore. But he said that when I searched how can I learn Angular, and I found a link about in Udemy courses still there, selling that courses in Udemy, and I was shocked, but I can understand that problem. Even after version 16, you cannot find any good resources about Angular to learn it. And when any junior newbies, when you start, do we have any newbies in Angular? I'm not sure about that, because the JS Conf Levent, that was he was on stream. I wasn't there, but you talked about the JS, not JS. What was that?
State of JS.
State of JS, yes, exactly. Thank you. You talked about it. The intent. What was that line name? I couldn't remember now. But the new developers cannot. They're not interested in to learn Angular, and these changes maybe will change this thing, but I'm not sure about that. When you search about Angular anything in Google, you will find a lot of things. And recently I was joined a kind of, my friend was joined and job interview in Angular. And that job interview, they asked, do you remember about that, Levent? Of course you remember. What was that injection token previous version name? It was what was the injection token class name? It was changed. Opaque token. yeah, opaque token that we have. Yeah, they asked these questions. What's the opaque token? And my friend was started to learn Angular version 7 or 8, and he didn't know about the opaque token because it was obsolete and it was removed. And when you try to learn Angular, you will find messy sources. Of course, it's valid for the other frameworks. When you start to learn React, you will find the old resources. But for the courses, for the articles about Angular, which is also, we don't have a lot of developer in Angular, but React community or Vue community, the other communities, they are producing a lot of contents about their frameworks, and this is the problem for Angular. Learning curve, of course, it's, I think, decreased, but when you want to learn Angular, you have to start with the Angular.io. The other sources, you cannot be sure if it is updated or not. That's another absence for Angular. Angular world, I think.
So the thing is, even if they learn, for example, version 13 or 12 or things like that are not on the latest, they still are, let's say, in a good point or in their, let's say, learning journey, because Angular hasn't changed much the basics. So we still develop components the same. The only thing that was added is standalone, but that just simplifies things when you learn it from the documentation. Maybe it may, let's say, be a problem when you learn it from, or when you see issues in Stack Overflow or other blogs, but in the documentation, now I've seen also that they are trying to convert every example to standalone. I think this will become easier. But even if they learn modules or even all the, let's say, patterns that, let's say, have existed in Angular, it's not going to be a bad thing, because there's a lot of code bases out there that still has that code. Not every code base is on standalone or using the inject or new hydration or everything like it, or functional interceptors, functional guards, all the new modern Angular stuff. So I think learning Angular, even the version 8 or 9, it doesn't matter. It's still, let's say, good, because the main things about Angular haven't changed. We do ng4 the same, ng the same. Those may change later, but
yeah, it's gonna be changed.
They're about to change, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With the new,
it becomes better.
Yeah, it does. It does. But okay, first things first. About a while ago, I don't know who did, but we kind of said that, well, there was a time that Angular team that didn't listen to the public, but that's not true. They always listen to the public. It's just, okay, when you're creating something, okay, out of scratch, there is a time that you have to do what you have to do first. Okay. Yeah, there will be some feedback, but not all feedback is accurate, right? I mean, if you think about it, you have a lot to do and people keep talking and everyone wants something else. You can't listen to everyone and you can't respond to everyone. That doesn't mean they don't know about your feedback or pay attention to it. It just means that they are too busy creating something before they can let you in. And they did. They did let us in. So, and they did this gradually, which is meaningful, because if you think about it, developer experts, they have always been there. And the number of developer experts kept increasing. And they always gave feedback from the community. It's kind of like being an advocate of your community. I have always been an advocate of our community, and the concerns that we talk about is always the concerns of the community. So you can't say that they didn't pay attention. They did. It just was another way. So we have to make this clear, okay? And I'm not being political here. I'm just trying to be fair, okay? We have to be fair about that. So if you say the whole team did not pay, that's not accurate. This is just the way they did it was different than the way it is happening right now, and it's meaningful because now we have something that is mature enough to get further opinion on, and the more feedback they get, the more improvements they bring to the framework. And now we are complaining about the improvements because it's changing everything. I mean, if you think about it, we are complaining about two ways of doing things, but we have been asking about these other ways of doing things, and it's not fair. So let's say doing this, I mean, having two ways of doing things is risky because of the simple fact that some people don't like it, okay? It's not that we don't like it or you don't like it. If you know both ways of doing something, that's not a problem for you, right? But for a company, it can be a problem because the company wants a framework that is mature and doesn't change a lot and doesn't bring confusion. And I'll give you one example, which is, I think, very significant. A company like SAP, for example, and I'm working for them, it has liabilities. The company has products, and those products have some support timelines. And something that changes too often, and 6 months is too often, by the way, that brings some complexity to the work of a company like SAP. Because when you promise a customer that you will support them and then can't, and by the way, you have to support them for a while with a specific version, then Angular updates and you have to update, but you can't because if you update, you break them, you break your customers. So in this kind of work, sudden changes or many changes bring complexity. And yeah, there are not too many breaking changes lately, but there will be. I mean, if you think about the path we are taking right now, like functional things instead of class-based things, and then we have new block syntax for control flow or lazy loading things, etc. I mean, this is all pointing on signals versus RxJS observables. If you think about it, we are moving to one direction, and we will definitely have some breaking changes after a while. It has to happen. And when that happens, companies will complain because they don't want it. Yeah, RxJS is not going anywhere for a while. You can't promise it's not going anywhere all the time. I mean, at least it's not going to be out of the box, I guess. At a certain point, I'm guessing signals are going to replace RxJS as out of the box solution. but you can still use RxJS. And you can use RxJS in other frameworks as well. You don't have to use RxJS in only Angular. I saw that comment. That's why I'm answering that question.
I think that I don't believe it, as Evgeny says in the comments. We have HTTP client and Angular router that say depend on RxJS, and they are fully RxJS in the internals. So removing RxJS is not going to be easy in Angular. And
it's not also going to be easy.
RxJS and Signals, let's say, may have some, let's say, things in common, but they're completely different when we use them. So one is for synchronous stuff and synchronization, one is for asynchronous stuff. We may want to use Signals for asynchronous stuff, but that's going to be an issue, and we hit a lot of roadblocks. While with RxJS, that problem is already solved out of the box. And I don't think RxJS is going away in Angular, but yeah,
I think RxJS is going to go away eventually because we will have observables from JS. I mean, JavaScript is going to have observables, so we won't have RxJS anyway.
Observables, but RxJS is maybe going to be just operators. I don't think browser will ship operators. Distinct until change, switch map, and all of that. Those still be needed. Racing conditions are, let's say, an issue in every framework, but in Angular, I have never seen that, let's say, be a huge problem because of RxJS and all the operators it offers.
I don't know how much you have written other frameworks, but I can say that, for example, in React, I have projects that do not use RxJS at all, and I have no racing condition at all. I mean, it depends how you design your product, and it has nothing to do with RxJS. It's not the only solution to handle these kind of things. I'm not saying RxJS is a bad solution, by the way. I have been using RxJS since it was version 4. So it's a good tool, yes, but it's not an easy tool. And it has never been an easy tool to understand, to comprehend, to learn, to use effectively. There are a lot of cases that you might have to know a lot of RxJS to come with a solution, okay? And that kind of dependency, and I'm calling it a dependency because currently, as you said, Angular depends on it. So router uses it. Why? Nobody knows. It doesn't have to use it. There is no racing condition with routing. There is no racing condition. There is no other router that uses RxJS. I mean, if you find another router that uses RxJS, I will accept you. Other than that, I can say router doesn't need it, but we used it. Whatever. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, I think the path that has been taken is a simpler one. And this is good because people will have fewer problems, when they try to learn Angular. Signals are much more easier to understand. And if you know promises, for example, and how to handle this kind of race conditions, you usually don't need anything like RxJS. You can still use it if you want, but I see a point in time that it's not going to be the solution out of the box. So I think where we are headed is kind of a point that there is no RxJS dependency of Angular, but you can still use RxJS with it if you want. And that's great because so there will be still tools that you can use with RxJS, like async pipes will still probably be able to resolve an observable and give you the value of it. But router will not need it, HTTP client won't need it, etc. So I guess we will all see in time. So nobody knows except the Angular team, I guess. But in the end, I am expecting this. And I have seen other frameworks work perfectly without RxJS. So I see no reason why Angular can't.
Really? I cannot imagine myself when I'm writing front-end solutions without using RxJS. You know, when you become a professional in an Angular, I always say same thing. We are not Angular developer. We are RxJS developer, because the other, yeah, exactly. Without RxJS, I cannot imagine the Angular. You know, I'm always trying to make everything observable. Sometimes I'm think, of course, imagine that we have a value in our state and it's not changing anymore when you load at it, and still I'm tend to make it observable. You know, I think it's a bad habit, because of I really love to use RxJS. I know there's a people like me in community, because I saw a lot of questions in the Angular streams, which is also that questions asked Minko about the operators. You know, because Angular developers tend to use RxJS a lot of, and they use pipes and operators, RxJS operators, and with the signals, the other developers really searched about the signal operators, kind of like that, and they asked that question, and the Angular team said that we don't have any consider about create operators for signals, because we want to keep the simple this just computed signals and effects functions, just that, and of course we cannot say Angular is has dependence for RxJS. If you want, we have a lot of ways to do things without using RxJS, but if I have RxJS, I always tend to use it, you know, because for me it's a great tool. Functional programming, I mean, you know, and also the signals. I created a side project, and I said to myself, I won't use any state management library, and I won't use any RxJS pipes. You know, just if I need, I will use the RxJS interop functions in Angular. And I started to create a project, and I found myself I was writing in pipe and I in RxJS, and I use RxJS interop to signal. You know, I'm always doing these things still, and for me, there is no chance to write Angular codes without using RxJS. That's my thought. What do you think about it?
That's because you learned Angular in a specific way, and now it's too difficult for you to imagine another way. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean
exactly.
that has to happen. And if you
Yeah.
are only writing Angular, I understand your standpoint, because you can't see any other way. I mean, how do people do that without RxJS, right? I mean, how can they do that? Well,
I think they
there
should
are
do that.
so
I
many,
think they should use RxJS, you know,
there are
because
so
it's really
many
great.
applications out in the wild that don't use RxJS at all. And they are handling all race conditions. They are doing all kinds of asynchronous things. They are keeping state. They're not even using signals at all. I mean, signals is an improvement on top of what they are doing already, and a very simple one. If you think about all of this, I mean, React is being downloaded for, I mean, in a weekly basis, I think it's around 20 million downloads. So most React developers don't use RxJS. Okay. And they are developing huge applications. I mean, you can't say RxJS, React is not usable in certain conditions. No, they are using React for everything, and it's working perfectly. It's not just React. I mean, think about it. No other framework is dependent on RxJS, and Angular doesn't have to. I'm not saying that they will remove RxJS in a couple of days. It's going to take a while. It's not going to be easy, but I don't agree that Angular has to use RxJS. I will never agree with that.
Of course, yeah.
AngularJS did not use RxJS.
Yes, exactly.
So,
but I think we have two kind of developers in Angular side. You know, for the beginners for Angular, always they started to learn Angular without using RxJS, because you know the learning curve already high, and they start to understand. They are trying to understand the components, directives, pipes, a lot of things that we have. And when you include that RxJS, they are just prevent themselves to use RxJS just functions the old way. You know, the object-oriented programming. And most of the Angular developers, we always say same thing, the backend developers, because for the backend developers, the Angular is the best choices to jump into front-end world. And when I started to write Angular, of course, I how can I say that? I used the use functions without using RxJS, and I realized that when I write like that code, it's getting messy. And I saw the RxJS solutions in the documentation, some courses, which is also it's really easy to read that type, map, that operators. When you understand all of that common operators in RxJS, it's really easy to do everything, for your data, for your state, and which is also we have in Angular services that gives us a chance to create our states without using any state management tools, which is also I was using NGRX before Signals. You know that I'm a fan for NGRX, and that without using it, I cannot imagine. For me, the RxJS is the best framework for the front-end world, and I think for the other frameworks, React, it doesn't matter. They should use it. And when I talked about it for the other mid-level or junior level front-end developers, doesn't matter they are using Angular or React. For the specific solution for declarative without RxJS and with RxJS, which one is the much more readable for you? They always pick the without RxJS, because they cannot understand. They didn't understand that operators what they are doing, and that was a problem. But I'm always saying to myself, in my office, I have colleagues, which is also they are, we can say, junior Angular developers. And when they wrote their codes in their project, they are always creating their solutions without using RxJS. But when I saw that code and when I bring the alternative solution with using RxJS, they got impressed always. Oh, that's really pretty good. I wrote blocks of codes for same thing, but with RxJS, you fix that problem just 2 lines. And maybe that's the bad thing for them. I don't know, but I'm the RxJS fan.
I think they like more the declarative code rather than imperative code. So that's what RxJS, let's say, gives us mostly. Like, it gives us a way to think about how we, let's say, structure our code and let's say our streams, our state at some point if we use NGRX or every other state management library. So RxJS gives us a paper and some good, let's say, colors to paint with it. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. So Levent, and your thoughts, you said that without RxJS, you can write any enterprise level project beginning of the end. Is it possible for Angular now?
I did. I'm not saying it's possible. I did. So
really?
Yeah, RxJS is not required at all. I'm not saying RxJS is not a good tool. It's a good, well, you called it colors. Yeah, it's a good palette. Yeah, you can do a lot of things, but if you are good at it, and if you're not good at it, then you can't be the part of the team, which is terrible. I mean, if you are creating a team of people, you need to make things easier for them. Okay, and declarative doesn't mean RxJS. You can use other stuff for being declarative, and signals are declarative, by the way. So again, Angular doesn't need RxJS, not after we have another reactivity solution in place. Since we now have a reactive primitive like signals, I guess we will move more and more towards it. And again, first of all, the router doesn't need RxJS at all. There is no need for RxJS in a router, okay? Second, HTTP client doesn't need RxJS at all.
One thing.
But I want to say something about router, I think.
Yeah. Sure.
then can we go to Angular router and rewrite it without RxJS and see what we fail or what we have to rewrite there from scratch that RxJS already, let's say, gives us? And also you said regarding HTTP client, I think that's not true.
It's true.
No, the point is with Fetch, we just got a board controller like 1 or 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember well. While with RxJS, we always, so with our HTTP client, and that was based on RxJS, we always had a way to cancel our, let's say, requests. And this was like a, let's say, a powerful thing that the other frameworks were like, they had to use their own, let's say, wrappers around XHR or Fetch in order to create these kinds of things. Well, with RxJS, we didn't have to think about it at all because just unsubscribe for it and you're done. And one other point regarding other frameworks that I see it's an issue is, for example, let's say we make a, let's say, API request when we open the component, but we, let's say, immediately leave that one. In other frameworks, I have almost never seen let's say, parts where they cancel that request. While in Angular, the moment that we use the async pipe directly in the template to retrieve the data, that observable is already canceled. And this, let's say, is like automatic unsubscription from that API call, and that API call will be canceled. So this is also another benefit that I see there, like things that we don't have to think about, but are there to protect us. And I don't know, yeah. That's it.
Canceling fetch has been around for a while, and canceling fetch is enough. I mean, a board controller is quite a, well, it's not a declarative solution if this is what you're worried about, but it is really easy to write a wrapper around it. So HTTP client is already a wrapper around something, right? I mean, it was a wrapper around XML HTTP request. It gave us a declarative API instead of making a request with XML HTTP requests. Now it's all also, I think it was in the works. I don't know if they completed or released anything about it, but fetch was going to be used in HTTP clients already.
Yes, it is.
So I think it's already ready, right? I mean, I didn't try it, but I think it's already, is it opt-in?
Did you try any of that?
I didn't try it.
With fetch, what it does is just changes the underlying mechanism of Angular that makes API calls, and instead of XHR, they now use fetch. But the HTTP client is still, let's say, a wrapper around whatever thing that's underneath. So we can also create our own fetch or whatever and push it there.
Exactly. And what HTTP client does with fetch is still cancelable, right? They can still cancel fetch requests.
Yes, but they use RxJS for that.
No, it doesn't. No, it's not the RxJS that cancels the request. It's the HTTP client that cancels the request based on the canceled RxJS. Yes, but you can easily implement something like this with signals. And I did. I shared it with my friends. I didn't share it in a public place yet, but you can do it with fetch. So,
but for also, of course, you can do that. But might has it.
I mean, Nevzat is listening to us, and he can confirm that he loved it, and it's really easy. It's really easy because fetch is cancelable, and signals are also cleanable. So you can basically cancel a request when you're no longer needing it. About controllers can be
when you compare with the RxJS solution. Which one is the I wanna just your real thoughts about that. You know, of course, we have solution about the fetch is cancelable and thing is also cleanable. Of course, we can create a solution about that, but which way is the straightforward and the clean way? And I mean, developer experience. I mean,
it depends on how you structure your code, how you design it.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, one thing that I'm really worried about when it comes to RxJS is that you have to subscribe to it if you want to use values out of it. Okay. And people are doing things like moving the logic to the templates just because of that. Because async pipe gets the value and they need that value So they are moving the logic to templates just to get around this. And if they subscribe, they have to unsubscribe. So now that we have ToSignal, people are hoping to use ToSignal to get around this. Okay, and all I'm saying is that there will be still need for subscriptions. There was always a need for subscriptions. There are some cases that you use subscriptions. Okay, it's not a pattern that RxJS invented. Okay, so the observer pattern is always there. It will be required in some cases, but not in all of them. In a normal HTTP request, you don't need it at all. In the end, if you make a post or get or any other request, HTTP client takes the first value and completes it. If you are taking the first value and completing it, it's no better than a promise. It's no better than a promise.
Yeah, okay? You can say like
so,
that, of course.
So I will never agree that any framework requires RxJS. Okay, I mean Angular does because of its design, and its design is changing. And I'm saying that in the
do you think it's going to be changed in the future? Well, I mean the HTTP client.
It's destined to change. It appears to be, and I'm expecting a point that the router no longer depends on RxJS because it's now based on another reactivity primitive, which is signals right now, and I think it'll work. HTTP client, again, doesn't require RxJS. Yes, it has subscriptions because of continuous values from a remote source, but it doesn't have to be RxJS. Like, for example, by then, maybe JavaScript is going to have observables. And in that case, you know,
that is another case.
At all, okay?
Yeah, everything is changing.
And I'm expecting a certain point that RxJS is no longer in our lives because of these two things. We already have a very good reactive primitive.
That's your expectation, or
that's my expectation.
You have some kind of evidence about the Angular features?
I don't have any
your
evidence.
GD guys, all of you guys GDs, you know,
I don't have anything.
Maybe you can give any gossip about that. Do you have any information about that? That's your thoughts, so you don't have any evidence about it in the future. What's the Angular team's ideas about you know? They just said that when they introduced the signals, they said that we are not removing the RxJS dependency for these parts, but of course you can use RxJS and signals together. But for your words, I can understand that now. That's my feelings about, again, the Angular team will try to remove that dependency in the future. I understood that now.
I'm not saying.
Did you say like that?
That is what I feel. Okay.
Your
feels. The reactivity primitive is a very important component. When you develop something like a framework, it's a very important. It's a very crucial one, and they changed it for a reason. And I don't.
What was that reason?
Is simplicity.
You mean RxJS
is also good for performance.
RxJS gives us a complexity.
It is complex. I mean, even if you are a master of it, you can still make a mistake with it. It's really easy to make a mistake with it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, cracking on the ideas. It's really. What are your thoughts about? You will say something again.
So, Angular itself never used RxJS in its core, like change detection or reactivity. Angular only used it in outputs. The event emitter is just a subject underneath. And that's it. That's the whole part where Angular core itself uses RxJS. While a router and HTTP client, of course, you can use your own router if you want. Nothing's stopping you. Even HTTP client, you don't have to use it at all. You just use fetch. But then you need interceptors, you need canceling, you need some kind of primitives in order to combine stuff together and not have to care about callback hell, as Evgen is saying in the comments. So when you start to care about exhaust map, debounce, switch map, all these kind of things, then you see its value. But of course, you can always create it yourself and not need it and I think a lot of other frameworks are doing it. Like in
What is your way? Also, you prefer to use RxJS or what is your way?
currently I'm using RxJS a lot, but since signals were released in 16, I think, or 15, 16, let's say some parts of my code are being converted to signals because it makes more sense. If I'm not changing it using some asynchronous stuff, then a behavior subject can easily be a signal. So it doesn't have to be a behavior subject just to compose it with some other observables. So I said also in the comments that I'm writing a blog post about combining observables and signals and finding a sweet spot there where we can, let's say, where both of them can live happy in this world together. And yeah, I don't see them, let's say, replacing each other. I see them as complementing each other. And I see a lot of good questions in the comments.
Which one? The Nevzat question that it's asking about pipes. What do you think about pipes? Of course, when I saw the computed and also signals, the first thing that I came in my mind I thought that
going away. I personally use them a lot, even create custom ones all the time, and yeah, I don't see them going away. They are powerful parts of Angular templates currently.
I want to ask Selin, you're working with a team, and you said that way the learning curve, it was really hard, and I don't know, but sometimes the junior developers join your team and they are starting working on the Angular projects. I'm not sure about that, but with the signals, you said that it's gonna be easy. And also, I saw that terminology, and I really liked it. The junior friendly, Angular, I think, is much more junior friendly after these changes. But did you observe any new Angular developer recently when they are trying to learn Angular, and if I try to learn the old ways or the new ways? Did you have any?
Yes. At the last event in the weekend, previous weekend, I met some guy, and he said that he previously backend developer. Oh, I shocked. And nowadays, he became to learn Angular with new version after 14, and with signals, standalone components, pipes, and lots of new things. He said that yeah, I really like to learn Angular, and I really like the new features. Yeah, I think Angular team makes something good for the newbies, junior friendly. I think so. And but previously Levent said not all of the companies use latest versions, so some of the newbies should learn a previous version of the Angular, because they waiting to stabilization of the things, and after that they upgrade their version. So although you are newbie, you unfortunately you should learn the previous version of Angular.
Yeah, of course. And this is my another concern. Who wants to start to learn Angular with the new features, and when he or she joined the Angular job, and imagine that the version is the 14, 13, and I think if he or she learned just the new ways with standalone, with signals, without using any old features, I think he's gonna be shocked, because it's not my Angular that I learned. That's my another concern about. And that's my thoughts again. For 2 years, the old features, I think the old features gonna be on the table for the enterprise level, because it's really hard to jump to new versions as a company, to upgrade the project. If your customers, the developers, as Levent's company, it's really hard to upgrade that changes, and also you have to upgrade that changes suddenly, because the developers wants to use it, and developers always ask new features about your solutions, which is also really you have really hard job, I think, Levent, because for our company, for my company, that you already work on Cortex, that our project, this is our project, our customers just our end users, and they don't know about which version. Even we have a product, that it's running on the AngularJS version 1, and we started to revamp it recently. We still creating new features and bug fixes, doing bug fixes on the AngularJS version 1, but the customers, they don't know anything about it. They're just using it.
Performance issues. Only performance issues.
Yeah, exactly. They're always complaining the performance issues, but for the versions, the Levent's job, the developers, the end users are developers, and they will always ask about the signals. We want to use the signals in our project. That's really hard to work on that kind of project.
Some of them will ask for that, and the others will try to keep RxJS. I mean, I think Enea is planning to write an article about sweet spot between RxJS. There is no sweet spot when it comes to customers. One of them is going to like signals, and the other one is going to like RxJS. So, yeah, two ways of doing things. Good for us, bad for business. Sorry?
We can use both in Angular. That's not changing.
Yeah, but that's the problem. I was hoping we could talk more about a server side developments in Angular, because that's really promising and that's really in line with where web development is heading. But since we have stuck in this topic, I'd like to say something about this. Simplicity is everything when it comes to promoting a framework. Okay, if your framework is difficult to learn, and if one of these reasons is RxJS, you have to get rid of it. When you get rid of it, you will have more people learning and using Angular. I'm not saying that Angular won't support RxJS. For people who still want to use RxJS, will be able to do that. But if you have to learn RxJS just to use the router of Angular or the HTTP client of Angular, sorry?
You don't have to.
Oh, but you have to, because those two things, and also the forms, for example, they all depend on RxJS. They all give you observables or streams that you have to know how to use, how to consume. You need to know that you have to subscribe, and you need to know that subscription is asynchronous. The most common problem I faced when I try to hire someone new to a team was always most people who never used RxJS thought subscriptions are synchronous, meaning they tried to do something before subscriptions, and then inside the subscriptions they thought it would be synchronous. So that would happen immediately, and then a line after the subscription they expected to see some output of it. So the value should be there, but it isn't. And they try to understand why it isn't. They search about it. It's always the same story.
I think they need to go back to JavaScript then. It's like asynchronous is part of JavaScript. It's not just Angular. Every framework has that.
RxJS is a library, and people need to learn that library first if they want to contribute to an Angular project. And
in these days,
removing this dependency out of the equation makes Angular much simpler to learn and use. And I love Angular. I just don't love the way you have to go through to learn it. I did. I learned a lot. I know a lot. I don't have a problem using RxJS at all. I knew RxJS even before I knew Angular 2. I knew RxJS 4. But I mean, Angular started when
For the developers, RxJS a little bit complexity.
But RxJS is making it complex for newcomers to learn Angular, to adopt it.
Yeah,
and they should be able to use a router. Without RxJS, there is no need for RxJS for a router. No other router is using RxJS for it. There is no race condition. There is no race condition in a router. There is no race condition in a simple HTTP request. If you are trying to make parallel requests, you can still do them with promises. And promises is, I mean, if you know JavaScript, you should know promises. If you don't know promises, that's your mistake. But if you don't know RxJS, if this is a requirement to learn Angular, I say
it's not your mistake.
Let's get rid of it. I mean, not get rid of it don't take it this way. I love RxJS and I use it, but I can. Not everybody can. So let's make it simple that everybody can use Angular.
Yeah,
that's all I want to say about this topic. I don't want to say anything else about this topic.
And do you have any last words about that RxJS conversation? Because of the
I love it. I don't recommend it to use it for everything. Like, use the right tool for the job, not just, let's say, use RxJS everywhere. I agree. I don't agree with the fact that you have to 100% understand RxJS to start with Angular. Like, the moment that you need it, you have to learn it. But for the basics, like to create a guard, you don't need RxJS. To make an HTTP call, you use fetch. But the moment that you need interceptors, you say, hey, let's use HTTP client because it already has interceptors. Then you go to, let's say, HTTP client get, and it returns you an observable. But what you can do is you can use an operator that converts that to a promise, and you go back to the promise world, and you can use a wait with last value from this observable or whatever. So that's something that junior developers can learn in an hour, or that you can explain to them, hey, you don't have to learn it by using subscription or stuff, but just convert them to promises just like and go with that. So
we can say like that, but for the junior developers, some junior developers, it's really hard to put that approaches directly in his mind, the functional, you mean declarative and imperative programming changes. They cannot change suddenly their ways, approaches to writing code. Yeah, it's a little bit hard. But I want to close that topic. We talked about RxJS a lot more, and just I want to jump that new control flow syntax. Recently they created RFCs for discuss about it, and they collect about a lot of feedbacks from community and developers, and suddenly we saw that a lot of feedbacks developers wanted to use @. That approach wasn't in the RFCs, and suddenly we saw that, and I think I'm not sure about that. You guys maybe about it. Maybe it's gonna be changed like that. That's my thoughts, and I really liked it because previously I was a .NET developer, which is also I was using MVC, and that MVC using Razor, and it's pretty same for me, and I really liked it that @ with blocks using control flow. And this is another part, the hardest part for the migration. And again, and as far as I know, the team said that we will try to find a way to migrate these blocks, this control flow changes that automatically upgrade to the new one. I hope they will do that. But just for the, again, thoughts, what do you think about new control flow? And of course, the changes is really great, but what do you think about the behind of that control flow? What kind of abilities will be able to come with that changes for developers? And nowadays in Angular, just we have class components, just that components that we have class, and maybe we can say we can include the services again, but the other parts also converted to not converted to, we bring another ways to functional ways for interceptors, for darts, for the other ways. And what do you think about that part? You know, do you think about it? Do you have any feelings or any gossips about that in the future? It will be there still as a class components. We will continue to use class components, or maybe we can jump on to some kind of functional components. What's your thoughts, guy? And I want to start with you, Enea, because you know I know your tweets that I wanna share with our community.
Okay, so
these tweets.
Components.
You see my screen. You said that how I see Angular in 2 years, signals DX from solid.js, control flow. You created some kind of
imaginary.
Is it again class that we have? Maybe we can use this kind of control flow like that. And I want to ask your thoughts about the feature of Angular with this control flows.
So regarding control flow and functional components, I don't see functional components coming to Angular. I don't know, they may come, they not, but I don't see them coming. Like classes are, let's say, a good way to create components. Lit also uses them for web components. And regarding the control flow, I think it's something that should have been here since the beginning. ngIf is great. ng4 is great, but having like, let's say, a built-in control flow syntax will ease the job to learn them. Like you said that Razor had them, like with the @, but I also, let's say, come from Laravel. Laravel has the same thing in its Blade templates, and it also feels, let's say, okay to me to have that kind of control flow in the templates. And regarding the Svelte syntax that they first announced and then went to say that, hey, we are also thinking about this other way, we'll have to see maybe what, let's say, becomes the solution, or let's say their solution in the end. We don't know yet. Maybe they create a poll, like a yearly survey that they do, and maybe ask the community.
Yeah. Eugenia has a comment about it. You know, people who experience with AngularJS controllers will never want to.
Yes, and yeah,
that's a really huge changes, and especially with ng containers, ng content, with a lot of you can say HTML text. It seems like HTML text, and when you see any Angular HTML template, which is also in nowadays we are using Tailwind CSS, a lot of predefined classes that we have in our HTML file. When I saw any Angular components, of course, it's really easy to read the component level, you know, when it's written in the RxJS, which is also much more easier for me. But I don't want to open that topic again. And but when I jump to template, which one is the ngIf, and also with else part, it created another ng template to find and to follow that code. It's still a little bit hard for me, you know, which is also I have been using Angular for 6 or 7 years, and the other parts, the read, and I think in terms of the readability, it's gonna be much more easier. But how can I say, I want to learn the thoughts about your thoughts as a GDs beyond these things. You know, we got Ivy, and on that time they said that just we are changing the template rendering engine, and with that feature we got a lot of changes, which is also these new features a part of that the possible for that Ivy changes. And with this control flow, what do you think about the future for new things, or it's just that?
I want to say something. I think this change, this feature, the only thing that become more complex than before about syntax, I think. Because NG4 is more simple, more readable for me, and I really don't like it.
Really?
But
I think you are the first one that I met with didn't like that control flow, new control flow. You are the first one.
Control flows on the syntax, I don't like it. No, but it's okay for the zoneless feature, and yes, this is Angular team's feature goal it is compatible with Angular team's feature goal. Okay, but I don't like the syntax of the control flow. Oh.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
really sad about it because as a Mahmoud, I love the new syntax. I'm super excited to use. It's gonna be really easy. That's my thoughts. What's your thoughts about that, Enea?
Yeah, I can't wait for the automatic migration so I don't have to change everything in my templates. But yeah, I'm also happy that it's coming. At this point, I don't mind regarding the syntax if it's with, let's say, with a @ or the Svelte style. It doesn't matter at this point. So they are both have their, let's say, pros and cons. And but one thing that also LG just said is that defer, let's say, defer directive, let's call it that, or defer block is fire, and it's going to, let's say, optimize a lot of our, let's say, templates and our application performance, because it
we
just
don't need to
lists
use anymore that
NG template
original,
out.
exactly, and also the observers, mutation observers,
Yes,
that resize observers that we need to use to do exactly the same thing. Yeah. What is your thoughts about Levent?
What do you think about the control flow?
Yeah, what is your thoughts?
I think you already
that
know.
cracks on the ideas again. Let's get started.
No, like it's a great improvement on top of what we already have. And I really like the ideas, and I also loved the fact that the team paid really close attention to the community, and they said simply, okay, let's rethink it. And it's a great way of handling that feedback. The thing that I still don't understand is why are we not using JSX just because React uses it? I mean,
No.
You already know why I support JSX. It's type safe because TypeScript supports it out of the box. And you don't need even a language server just to highlight things or help the developer about it. Yeah, people think that it is somewhat wrong to put HTML into JavaScript and then into that HTML again JavaScript. So I do understand that, but yeah,
go ahead.
Yes, so the thing about Angular templates is that they are analyzable at the compiler level. So they can, let's say, analyze the template and chunk it and create, let's say, small functions for everything. That's what Ivy does, the compiler under the hood. So they grab every piece of the template and, let's say, create small functions that create and update those, let's say, bindings. While with JSX, you cannot do that at, let's say, the level that they want, like to be precise about everything. So this is one thing, because JSX is really dynamic. So you can do everything with it. It's like you can put JavaScript there, functions, methods, everything. And I don't think they don't do it because it, let's say, it's just used by React, but it doesn't, let's say, fulfill all Angular needs, what Angular needs right now. For example, Angular makes let's say, a separation between bindings and event bindings with, let's say, the brackets and the parentheses. Yeah, we have, just like we have event binding and data binding, so we also have the property and attribute binding. So those are different things that Angular, let's say, optimizes under the hood. And I don't think they were able to, let's say, they are able to do that with JSX, where in order to put an event there or an event handler, you just put a function, and they don't see ways to optimize it. At least that's what I think their, let's say, issues are with JSX. So JSX doesn't has all the stuff that Angular needs in its templates to support changing to it, let's say, or migrating to it. Otherwise, they would be just creating another flavor of JSX. So creating a custom one just to support Angular, but I don't see that.
I hope it won't come. That's my thoughts again. Yeah, I'm the other person. I don't like to use JSX also.
But you'd like to have functions in the template, I believe.
Yes, still I'm trying to get using that functions in template.
You need that track by, right? Track by, you need that I want this item to just return item.id. But you cannot do that in the template, so you have to create a method for it in Angular. Imagine now if you had that possibility. So JSX is great, but also comes with these trade-offs. So it's all about trade-offs, and that's what I think they.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Levent, do you want to continue?
I don't want to say anything about. I don't want to say anything about what they are trying to do with the templates and what they can't do with JSX without trying it first. But all I can say is,
I think they have tried some stuff because they have been experimenting a lot, like with the control flow syntax, for example. The reason why I think they went first with the Svelte style is because it's analyzable. Svelte already has a compiler, just like Angular. And let's say
they want to
analyze
that part and replace it with something else. That's what you're saying. And in JSX, you do these kind of things by introducing components that do specific things in a specific way. So it changes how you do things. I'm not saying that they can do everything they do now with JSX. I'm just saying that if they want to change the design of how they're doing things, you can have JSX with Angular. It's not that they simply can't use JSX. And I don't agree that JSX is not declarative and imperative. It's nothing like that. JSX is definitely declarative. What I'm trying to say is, by using templates, this is a decision, and I respect that decision. If you are preferring one way of doing things, and this may be using templates, by the way, there's always a trade-off, because software design is always a trade-off, and there's always a trade-off. In this case, one trade-off is you need to create a language server so that you can highlight things, find problems, report them, etc. So you need to do these analysis by yourself. That's the only way you can do it. What I don't get about, okay, let's say lazy loading. This is a feature that you want to bring to Angular, right? Easy lazy loading, right? It's been there with React for ages. And it's just React.lazy and importing a component, which is, again, JSX, and putting it right into the JSX. I won't agree, again, with a comment like, yeah, we can't do this with JSX. It is doable, hence they are doing it. And the thing is, another trade-off. Okay, you have to play effort into creating a language server. That's one thing. Okay, let's say you are okay to do it. You have the capacity to do it, maybe. Then when you're not using, to be able to transform data, you invent something like pipe. You create another thing to learn about templates. Then you create some specific syntax like banana in the box. And then you create another syntax like the star shape, the asterisk all of these things are trade-offs. And Angular has made the decision going towards the templates. And yeah, there are some advantages like, okay, yeah, statical analysis. Yeah, they do it. But what do we get out of it? I don't know. And more importantly, what do we lose when we go for templates? One thing that we definitely lose is React can render anything just because it renders JSX. So you can make it render something not web at all. It doesn't have to render. I think
at this point you should have wear your React t-shirt.
No, just a second. Just a second. I'm still Angular on an Angular side. I'm just saying that you have to notice the trade-offs. They can render anything. They can render anything. They don't have to render web. They can render anything. They can render something like React Native, for example.
Go ahead, Enea. You will say something.
Yes, I was saying that in Angular you have a renderer that you can implement. For example, in React you can also use the React 3 Fiber, where they use React components and render on canvas. You can do the same thing in Angular. Chao, it's another GDE. He, let's say, built Angular 3, and it does the same thing. So he created a renderer that renders Angular components into canvas. So I think it's doable. The point that they are not creating something like React Native is maybe because Google also has Android and Flutter that they, let's say, suggest for, let's say, native applications. So they don't need another tool to build native applications. Facebook created
built for web already. It was built for web in the first place. That was always the idea.
Flutter?
I understand that, but that's a trade-off. You have to understand that. And you're saying that it is doable, but that means you have to write something that parses something completely different. Now you have another template. You have another kind of parser, and you have another kind of renderer to be able to do that.
But that's the case also with React. For browser, you need React DOM. For React Native, you need the native, let's say, bridge that they use.
It's a kind of a mapping there.
Yes, but
React you don't need a separate language server for your next React project. You want to render a CLI project, you can still do it with React, which is a trade-off. You have to understand that there is a trade-off there.
I understand that there's trade-offs, but I mean, if they both implement a renderer, they both can do it. Like maybe React may have better support because of JSX, but in Angular, with some, let's say, tricks, you can also get that. But it's not, let's say, from what I've seen, it's not the point of Angular to have like, hey, we support every platform there is, like terminals or mobile applications or everything. So they mostly focus on browsers. Angular is a front-end framework, and I think it should stay like that. And regarding having native stuff, let's go with native apps.
Can you bring the comment back? Because I have an answer to that. That's inaccurate because Preact has signals for reactivity and they use JSX.
Preact, you said that. Yeah.
Preact,
yeah.
Yeah, also Solid uses signals and uses JSX.
Exactly.
But it's different kind of trade-offs, as we said before. So in Angular, I think they are doing, let's say, rendering or let's say surgical rendering at template level, while in Solid they do it at the binding level. But it's a topic regarding how change detection works, and it's always about
exactly
trade-offs and what the team thinks is the thing.
And after the control flow topic, just for the last topic, I want to talk about the job vacancies for the global. for Angular. A lot of new developers ask same questions. When I learn, if I learn Angular, do I have any chance to find a new job? In terms of the salary and all of the other Angular developers, I think we are thinking on the same way. The salary is a little bit much more React developers when we compare with it. But for the job opportunities and job vacancies, you also are working really good companies, all of you guys, and in the community you're also active. And what do you think about it? And the Angular is getting less than in terms of the job opportunities, or it increases again. What do you thought? What is your thoughts?
Regarding salaries, that thing depends on country and companies.
Yeah.
And the thing is, yeah, it's true that there are more React developers and there are more, let's say, job openings with higher salaries. But those high salaries are for more senior developers. What about junior developers for React positions? So these are kinds of, let's say, statistics that I don't have.
A lot of junior developers always say, so which framework that I need to learn, React or Angular. And you said that it doesn't matter if you are junior.
So there's this case where I've seen also posts online where people say, hey, if you learn React, you're competing with like 1 million other React junior developers. And let's say when you apply to that job offer, there you're not alone there. While if you learn Angular, there will be less competition, and there are a lot of job openings for Angular from what I've seen in LinkedIn. I speak
even if you are junior.
Yeah, even for junior positions, it doesn't matter. It's always like for every position, there will be less competition. So I think that's a good thing and a bad thing for both technologies. Like if you learn React and you say, hey, I invested in this thing, now I want a job, but now I'm competing with, let's say, 1 million other developers, then you have to be better than them. So
what about you, Levent? Yeah, continue, Enea. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. What about you, Levent? You said that as far as I heard about it, your company tried to find it. You tried to find another developer in Angular.
No, I have worked for a lot of companies, and for many of them, I was involved in hiring process because I was technically capable of Angular, and we were trying to find capable people. So we were trying to find seniors, not too senior, but at least people who know a bit of Angular. And it was always a challenge finding them. And when you can't find experienced Angular developers, you have to go for junior developers, as Enea told. And the problems begin at that point because here is the deal. When you work with another framework, and it doesn't have to be React, with any other framework actually, a person with just a bit of experience, is able to contribute to a project. But when it comes to Angular, I believe the developer that will contribute to the project, I must say some people are exceptional, so don't think about yourself if you are one of those exceptional people. But usually, if you are trying to find an experienced person and can't find an experienced person, so you have to work with an inexperienced person. That inexperienced person still needs some experience to be able to contribute. So it's not a completely inexperienced person that you can hire and get contribution from. And that's a big challenge. And the big challenge here is
partly you have a question for Levent?
Partly because of RxJS and TypeScript and other stuff. So make it as simple as possible, and people will love to use Angular, because Angular is really well structured, has a lot of good features. All you need to make it is a little bit more simpler so that people will adopt it and use it more often.
So,
Enea has a question for you, Levent, I think.
Not a question, but I want to point out something like, if you're searching for Angular developers and you say that, hey, Angular is better because it's structured, it has some good building blocks or stuff like that, it means that if you want to hire for Angular and that Angular is already a junior one, it means that they have already passed that bar. So it means they are already at the point where they know Angular. So it's like filtered out from junior developers that don't, let's say, know the basics of a framework. So if someone comes and say, hey, I know the basics of Angular and I'm, let's say, comfortable with it, it means that they are ready at least to get some, let's say, junior level tasks. So I see this like a kind of filtering. So because it has a higher, or let's say a little bit higher learning curve than the other frameworks. So it's easier to filter out good developers and not good developers.
Yes, it is. So it's just that it's not easy to find good developers. I mean, it's easy to filter them. It's not easy to find them. And I agree that if you are an Angular developer, it's very likely that you find a job that is paying well and has good conditions, a good contract. Yes, it's an investment. I mean, if you're a junior and a company is hiring you, this is usually an investment on you. They are not planning to hire you and then get rid of you in a couple of months. They are going to invest in you. And if you're a senior, you're already like a diamond. It's really difficult to find you. So if they
like
find you, if they find you and if they are offering you a contract which is okay for you, you are in good shape. Everything is good. Everything is fine. And I always said that being an Angular developer is better than being a React developer. I never said the otherwise. I mean, I am not against Angular. You have to understand this.
When but you are not talking like that. You seem like against Angular, and I said that you should have changed your T-shirt.
Look, I have always been critical about any work, including Spartacus, by the way. I am the tech lead of Spartacus, and I am critical about it as well. It also is not simple, by the way. So what I'm trying to say is, make it as simple as possible so that more people will be able to join the crowd. And we need the crowd to make it live longer. And okay, let's say Angular loses its user base, its developer community. We all lose it. We will find a very difficult time to find a library. We will have a very difficult time to find a solution about a problem that we face. So the community is very important for any framework, any library, okay? And I always want Angular to have more and more. Popularity is not important for me, but more people using Angular is, okay? And I never try to hide my knowledge so that nobody else learns Angular. I always try to share it with others so that people learn Angular and love Angular somehow, okay? And I'm trying to make a point here. Make it simpler, as simple as possible. Whatever you do, make it simpler. If you introduce something, make sure it's simple, okay? Yeah, if you're going to change something, make sure the new way of doing things is simple. It doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be simple. Because this is what we lack about Angular.
Yeah, exactly. What is your thoughts about it, Selin?
It's not simple. It can be, and it is. Yes. It looks like it's going to be. That's what I love about the new stuff. So I don't care if we don't use JS6 or not. I'm just joking about it. Why don't we use JS6? Yeah, I mean, we can, but we prefer not to. Okay, so make sure you do whatever you do in a simple way. As simple as possible for the developer. It doesn't have to be simple for the Angular team. It has to be simple for the developers. Okay? Yeah. And I will always be supporting that idea. So let's have we have a language server, a service. A language service is a great addition to our arsenal, but Do you remember when it came? It was Angular 12, I guess. I mean, I have been using Angular since Angular 2, and actually my first Angular product, Angular 2 product, was with Angular in beta. The company who hired me to develop that product was, I think, stupid. But
the company said that and company really said that we have to use the beta.
They wanted Angular 2, and Angular 2, Angular 2 was in beta when I developed and finished the work. Okay,
good old days.
I have been using. I remember the time that there was no ng module. Okay, so bear with me. I'm trying to say, let's make it simple. Let's make it simple, because if we can make it simple, I really think that we all will benefit from it. We will all see a lot of libraries making our lives easier.
And also the newcomers, other junior developers come to abroad.
So we all are seniors. Like, I mean, all of us are seniors right now. We can consider ourselves seniors at least. Any junior developer who can adopt Angular faster than now will help us more in less time, which is good,
hiring
right?
processes to find the sources. Nowadays the companies tend to use the other frameworks because they cannot find any sources. They cannot find any Angular developers because they they should consider about sources, especially for the Turkey, and I want to ask the same question for Selin. What do you think about that hiring processes? And I know that you are joining to that hiring processes for your teams. And recently, did you search any Angular developers recently? Doesn't matter, junior or senior.
There is an equation. If it is hard to learn and hard to find the new developer for the project, and the companies will not prefer for new projects and for continuing project. They are not. They will not prefer Angular to use Angular framework for their projects. So
new projects also for the current projects,
because this is not. Because they want to continue their project, they add some new features and bug fixes like that, and they could not find developers. Angular team or Angular community. No, only Angular team should make Angular preferable for all of the projects, all of the levels.
You mean for the companies?
For the company, because all Angular lovers also get payment to coding in using Angular. So without payment, I think Angular lovers should not continue to love Angular. So if you want to continue to love and to use Angular, you should make Angular more easy to learn, and you should listen your community. Keep going to listen your community. So I think there is an equation. It should be. I totally agree with Levent. It should be less background. Need less background knowledge and simple. And companies will prefer to use Angular in their projects. And the Stack Overflow survey also shows that Angular is nowadays Angular continues to prefer in companies with senior level and junior, all levels. It is in top 5, I think, in frameworks, both front-end and back-end frameworks. So I think Angular team will continue to keeping it simple and preferable.
Yeah, exactly, and which is also for the even today the companies using Angular, doesn't matter they on the middle of the project, and if they get stuck any kind of resources to find Angular developers, which is also they change the technology that I learned, that I heard about it, and Angular to React. It was a problem for that company. But in terms of the salary, if you are working for the globally, for the global companies, which is also as an Angular developer, you have a lot of chances that I know that from the LinkedIn, from the Stack Overflow. When you make it, keep it easy, when you make the Angular easy, maybe much more competition that we have in the future, but doesn't matter if you want to continue using the Angular. You said that the Angular team should make it easy, and I totally agree with all of that thoughts. And it's 1 to 1 approximately 2 hours, and I don't want to keep all of you guys up tonight, and we got tired, I think. If you want to continue, I really like to continue. I would love to really continue that kind of conversation, because the cracking the thoughts, it's really great. Maybe beginning of the stream, we have 17 audience, and thank you for all of you guys. And do we have any specific question that you realized I want to bring it to stream now?
Basim asked a very important question. I think there
Yeah.
was there were other questions about SSR as well, and I really want to say something about the developments around server-side rendering. The web development paradigm is shifting towards the server, and
Again.
yes, again, that's not the first time.
Yeah, that again is important.
But it's
we are
for good reason.
We are in the same, always in the same cycle. We started using server side, and we jump on the client side, and we are returning on the server side again. But now we don't want to leave using that front end technologies. Just the differences.
Yeah, so anyway, this is really good. We are now investing in, I mean, Angular is investing in server side. And I don't know if you tried the latest partial rehydration thing. It's great. It's really great. It's magic. It's working out of the box. You don't have to do anything specific to make it work. You just need to enable it. That's it. And I have been following the other frameworks in terms of server-side developments more. They already have some client-side solutions already in place. But when it comes to server-side, it was like Angular was lacking the lead there. But now that they are heading towards a better server rendering, a more optimized output, and I'm guessing they will also introduce some tools to make our lives easy when working with a server. It really has the potential to become the best framework. It's already best in what it does. Okay, so when you want to create a client-side rendered application, client-side rendered web application, it's a very specific thing, but if you are trying to do that, it's the best, okay, as is. And it has been the best since probably Angular 4 or maybe 6, I don't know. But somewhere around there, it became the best, for me at least, okay? And it is still the best when it comes to developing a client-side rendered web application. Usually these applications are back office applications or this kind of applications, but it never is a commerce application, for example. And I'm concerned about this because of Spartacus project, which is Angular and
for
commerce.
example, I never worked for any SSR projects in Angular, you know. I have never worked, and I have been working, and I am working as an Angular developer at least 8 years, 9 years, and I never worked on any SSR projects before.
Yeah,
and
but
I always worked on the back office projects.
You have to understand one thing about Angular and server side. It doesn't work like the other frameworks. It renders the same thing, and you don't feel the difference too much. You have to be careful about not using the browser APIs on the server side, but you have enough tools to do that. And I'm not concerned about that part. I actually love that part. Okay, so and with the injection tokens that you can pass through the dependency injection, and you can really separate server logic
And
from
client.
yes, you can do a lot of things. You can even use Node APIs or Express APIs inside an Angular application without worrying about those APIs to end up in the browser. You can do this distinction really easily. Okay, it's really easy to do that with dependency injection. Okay, and I love the fact that Angular has dependency injection, by the way. I love dependency injection. No other framework does have it as Angular does. And I guess with server rendering better equipped to deal with a quicker response and then little time to be reactive. I mean, not reactive, but interactive, sorry, on the browser side. So better web vitals. A quicker response, a better web vitals means better business, more money. Everybody wants more money. Okay. So if Angular does that, and they already said this publicly, so there's no reason to hide this, resumability is under their radar. So they are trying to.
Probably possible with signals.
It is possible with new reactive primitives and with new partial rehydration that they already have. It is possible, and they know it. They have the know-how because of the Viz framework that Google already has. Okay, and I'm not really saying that it is a must. I mean, resumability is something cool, but it's not a must. Maybe they will end up with something else. I'm only happy that they are paying attention. They are trying to build something that people will use to create great content for server-side rendering requirements as well. And e-commerce is one of them, just one of them. But I'm guessing any kind of product that we will develop in the near future will somehow have some server component, because even if you think we have so many services that we have to integrate with to do a business. It's becoming more and more complicated doing business, and it's becoming more that you need a server component just to authenticate sometimes, just to authenticate safely, because some APIs require you to use credentials flows, and a client credential flow includes a client secret, which you have to keep secret because this is the definition of it. And you can't keep a secret in a browser. It's impossible. So you need a server component, even for an authentication. A simple authentication requires you to have a server component. And Next.js project doesn't have that problem. A SweatKit project doesn't have that problem. I think we can find a lot of value in Angular Universal or whatever replacement it will have, even for client-side rendered applications. Still use the power of servers.
Yeah, exactly. For the replacement, I want to mention about that, and I saw that PR, I think the Enea shared about it again. The Angular Universal will include the Angular SSR. It's the same repository. I think they created that kind of PR.
Yes, so I think the whole point of it is to have every Angular part in the same mono repo. So maybe they can easily test it, release it, and let's say work as one, not as separate thing, like we have to do with NG Universal, Express Engine, and things like that. So I think it's more about unification of Angular parts. And regarding the question that is, what do we think about front-end with server solutions, SvelteKit, Next, Analog, everything like that? What I don't like, to be honest, is the, let's say, file system routing. I don't know. it doesn't fit well with me. I want to, let's say, have my components names just like they are. I don't want to have
fine.
dot and ID there or stuff like that, or dot page. I already have that component there, so they are great, but there are some things that don't fit in the way I like to, let's say, build my applications. Regarding the moving things to the server, I also don't see that as the ultimate solution. Yeah, moving things to the server is great, but if I, let's say, if I have a great internet speed, then I don't need to move everything to the server. I can, if I'm downloading, for example, an image that is 1 megabyte, I can also download 1 megabyte of JavaScript. That should be enough to, let's say, power, how can I say, a homepage, or let's say a user-facing app. While for dashboards, I don't think we need server-side rendering. Like client-side rendering has, let's say, is fast enough, I think, and let's say allows for more faster user experiences, because you don't have to go to the server, render everything, come back and render that again. While you can just go to the server, get the data, and let's say just render the data. The component would be there the second time. So you don't have to, how can I say, go to the server for everything. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah,
so
this is another great one.
I don't see client-side rendering going away for dashboards or for internal apps. I think it's the right solution for that. While for user-facing e-commerces, blogs, or homepages, things like that, I see the static site generation would be great. If that's not possible, then incremental static regeneration. So let's say rendering those things when they change. And yeah, probably that's it. Server-side rendering is great, but it's costful. Servers, let's say, start to cost when your user count, let's say, increases.
Yeah, exactly. But at least we have that chance with Angular now. Before that, of course, we did have, but the experiences was not good in terms of the performance.
Is not good because we had to care about how we build those apps. The whole point of Angular server-side rendering is it will return the response when all the microtasks are finished. And to understand microtasks, you have to also understand how Angular works with change detection and Zone.js and everything like that. And let's say that's where our issues, let's say, came in. We had to understand those things in order to build apps with it, and let's say fix the issues that we may have. And
yeah,
I think that's the
Then with that new SSR, with hydration, new feature, Angular brings us new good and strong chance to create server-side projects, which is also great. And I totally agree all of your thoughts. And do you have any last words about?
Whatever framework you're using, if you can learn a lot of frameworks, there's no problem. But most people use 1 or 2 frameworks at most.
Yeah.
So if you are going to learn one framework, would you rather learn something that can only be used for client-side rendering and doesn't have enough tools for delivering a server-side rendered application when it's needed? And it's needed, by the way, for money, for profit. People need speed. Not everyone has the fastest internet connection. You have to sell to everyone. And even if you have the fastest connection, okay, I live in Germany. A lot of places have really good connection. So even if I'm on a mobile phone, I really get good connection, and I really can use a fast internet. But sometimes it's not really good. Even then, your project should work. Okay, in some businesses this is important. E-commerce, for example, I'm trying to buy something. I can't wait too much. There is already analysis about that in the wild. You can search for it, and you're going to understand that you need server-side rendering in this case. And when you need server-side rendering, and you have problems with Angular, then it comes to that. Okay, you have to learn something else together with Angular to be able to effective in both cases. But Angular is the best framework for web, right? So it has to be best in this as well. Otherwise, you will have to learn two things. You will have to, if you can do everything that you can do with Angular with React, and React has better server-side rendering, why do you even need Angular anymore? This becomes a question, okay? And people don't have time to spend on learning two things. It's a very rapidly developing environment now. We are trying to learn a lot of things, not just frameworks. We have to learn web. We have to learn backend as well. We have to learn server technologies to understand things, to work with them. Even if you are a front-end developer, you need to understand some part of server technologies as well. So you need to understand accessibility, you need to understand design, you need to understand styling, etc. There are a lot of things that you have to know about. And then you have to learn two frameworks. Why? Because Angular can't do server-side rendering. That's another thing.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's keeping people away from Angular.
I think we have that ability now.
We don't. We still don't. Yes, the latest partial hydration is great, is marvelous, but it's not enough. We have to improve other things as well, and they know it, so they are investing in it, and I'm happy about it because they are investing in it. And if these people, they are very clever people, if they invest in something, we will achieve it. I know it. And now they're paying attention to the fact that people are moving to the server side, not just because we need server-side rendering. Yes, sometimes you don't need server-side rendering. We can do it with client-side rendering or static site generation, whatever. But we still need some server components sometimes. That means you also need to integrate with some companies, some other services, just to do your business. Okay, you need to authenticate to these services, and some of these services require authentication by machine-to-machine communication. Currently, if you are trying to build a client-side rendering application with Angular, you will need another server application in between, like a BFF, for example, just to be able to do that. But the Next.js project, first of all, having a server rendering things for you is not as costly as you think it is, because we can cache a lot of things. So the server result can be cached. Just like you can cache the HTTP request, you can cache the server render results. Okay, so people figured out, okay, we are rendering on the client side, and I know the history of it. I mean, I started as a webmaster, as many people probably did. People started rendering on the client side for a reason, and then some people started to think, oh, it's great to move all the costs to the client, because now I don't have any costs. I simply have a web server. I'm serving some static files. I have no cost at all. Yeah, you don't. But then when you want to integrate with something, you don't have a solution as well. So have a server, cache your results as much as you can, and don't worry about that cost. That is not a big cost after all. And it's also not difficult to provide a Node.js server. So you can easily create a Node.js server, and you can start serving your pages. And I believe we are on a good path. I'm really happy about it. I really love the effort Angular team is putting now into this. And I'm really curious, when they succeed, what will be the best framework? I guess it's going to be Angular.
Yeah, we'll see. And I believe that it's going to be really great. And by the way, it's been 2 hours, really 2 hours. We talked about Angular, and it's also really great for our community. And if you don't have any, unless you have any question, another last verse, I want to say goodbye for all of our community and for all of you guys. And Enea, thank you again. You joined us and
Thank you.
really loved it. I hope for the next events we will see you again here. And thank you again. So Levent, thank you. You joined us and you said that I want to join this meeting, this event, and you really made a great effort. You were in Turkey and you went Germany again for we set that event date for you. And Selin, again, thank you. You joined us. And for all of you guys, community and Türkçe, I want to jump on to Turkish languages. Hepinize çok teşekkür ederim arkadaşlar. İyi ki geldiniz, iyi ki izlediniz. Tekrar burada bir altyazı çalışması yapmaya çalışacağız. İyi ki varsınız. Hepinize görüşmek üzere. Goodbye.
Bye bye. Have a good night.
Bye.